A hate figure who urged his followers to turn their backs on their own country, who's linked to more than 500 jihadis who travel to Syria and Iraq. After more than 20 years of inflammatory rhetoric, Anjem Choudary is now a convicted terrorist. An Old Bailey jury found him guilty of inviting support for IS, the so-called Islamic State, in a series of speeches posted on the internet.
In this country, the police are biased, the judges are biased, the lawyers are biased, the CPS is biased. We initiate the jihad. That is what you call the dignity and the honour of the Islamic State.
In a complex case, prosecutors said these hate-filled sermons inspired hundreds to travel to Syria and Iraq to join IS. Speaking exclusively to Sky News the night before he was convicted, Choudary continued to insist he was simply exercising his right to freedom of speech.
If I had even sent one person abroad, really sent them abroad, if they could link that to me, then surely, I would have been caught, under the anti-terrorism legislature a long time ago.
But the links are in the direction, the links are in the speeches and the lectures that you give. The links are in what people interpret you to be saying about their duty as a good Muslim to go and join the caliphate. Scotland Yard believes hundreds of people have answered that call from you. Anjem Choudary was one of 9 people arrested in September 2014 as part of an investigation into the banned terror group Al-Muhajirun. One of those arrested with Choudary was his right-hand man, Siddhartha Dar, a Muslim convert now known as Abu Ramesa.
We want Islam. We want Islam to dominate the world.
But he skipped bail and fled the UK. Now in Syria, he's taunted the authorities back home with a series of pictures like this one, clutching his AK-47 and his newborn child. And he's now widely believed to have replaced Jihadi John, killed in a US airstrike, as Islamic State's executioner-in-chief, appearing in a horrific video where a group of men were murdered on camera. Are you proud of that?
I've known Abu Ramesa for a long time, many years, and I've always been proud of him as a Muslim brother. And
are you proud of him now, in terms of the actions?
Let me come on to that. But I've always been proud of him as a Muslim brother, and when he was here, he ascribed to similar views. If he decides to go abroad with his family, that's his choice.
It is. Do you condemn it?
And the point is that if he wants to go and live somewhere with his family, because he doesn't believe he's, for example, going to get a fair trial.
It's his choice, but do you condemn it? I'm not asking about whether he has the choice to do it. Clearly, it's his choice. Do you condemn it?
Mark, I've never been in the game of condemning or condoning people.
Chowdary's 4-week trial and guilty verdict were heard in secret after a judge imposed a reporting ban because of a related court case. But now he and his co-accused Mizanur Rahman face up to 10 years in jail when they're sentenced next month.
They operated very carefully. They, in their mind, operated within the law. But what we saw more recently is a number of postings online by both of them which did actually meet the criteria of extremist and terrorist material.
Choudary comes from a British Pakistani family. Brought up in East London, he studied in Southampton, embracing student life to the full. His descent into extremism came later. A qualified solicitor, he joined a now banned terrorist organisation. Around that time, Majid Nawaz was a young radical, later jailed for terror offences in Egypt, who back then was an associate of Anjem Choudary. Now a counter-extremism campaigner, he describes Choudary as a very manipulative figure who targets the impressionable.
To feed them an ideological dogma is what we now call radicalisation. But if we want to think of it in terms of traditionally what we understand is a form of grooming. And that's what Anjem does.
Choudary shot to prominence after the 9/11 attacks, holding a press conference to praise Osama bin Laden. And he did exactly the same after the 7/7 London bombings. But this time the attackers had links to his own extremist group. He was also close friends with Michael Adebolajo, one of the killers of Fusilier Lee Rigby, and caused more outrage when he claimed the young soldier would be burning in hell. But despite repeated, horribly insensitive remarks, he always managed to stay on the right side of the law. For the jury weighing up this case, it has been the most difficult of deliberations, delving deep into an admittedly grey area, trying to determine whether Anjem Choudhary's views, expressed openly to supporters here in East London, in the media and at public demonstrations, have crossed the line into criminality and encouraged others down a path towards violent extremism.
He is extremely dangerous. The word he spreads goes out on Facebook, Twitter and social media, YouTube, and it effectively infects the minds of vulnerable young men who are looking for some new meaning.
In the end, it wasn't the hate-filled rhetoric that did for Anjem Choudary, but the subtle, insidious support he offered a terrorist organisation. In this last interview, the man I've known for 15 years was in usual bullish form, trying to convince me he'd won over the jury. The very next morning, in a unanimous verdict, they found him guilty. Mark White, Sky News.